use that. And it wasn't even close. I mean, the Baneling nest, it wasn't like, oh, just a few more seconds. No, like there was actually a minute window whereby he could kill Dongraegu. And it's nice to see this type of playstyle. We don't see it enough, probably.
Well, let's introduce our players here in the north position on Metropolis. As the Red Zerg from Team MVP, it's DRG. And in the south position as the Blue Terran, a specialist of timings, Grubby? I don't know, but certainly a killing machine. It is Complexity Heart. And the other thing about Heart that's really impressed me is that I really feel like Heart is thinking a lot about positioning and tricking your opponent into thinking you're in one position but being in another. You know, and I want to think back to the games, I believe it was Heart versus Parting, where we saw this interesting opening, of course, which was a bio opening from Heart, but because of the positioning of his units very close to the Protoss base and not revealing those, he was able to, upon an attack by the Protoss, slip into his opponent's base and do the damage. And I don't think that it was just dumb luck that his army happened to be there, that the Protoss army moved across and he moved in. I felt like it was actually really thought out. And in fact, it was on Metropolis. So I think in addition to being a specialist of timings, which certainly he is, we've seen him go long games, we've seen him go for those super deadly, you know, like knife to the neck type kill builds, but his positioning and thoughtfulness of that has just really impressed me.
Yeah, and I think if I ever face Heart in the battlefield, I would want to take a shower with a special herbal shampoo and just kind of sing to myself, like, open up your mind. Because all the standard styles that you're playing against Heart, they're not gonna work out as well if you're not quite on top of what he's doing. Like, he's doing things you don't necessarily expect. So you really need to take your mind and stretch it out and expand it and say, what would a really smart player, what would a really well-positioned player do? Like, there's actually a lot of weaknesses in all of our play which are constantly not being exploited because of the standard accepted way of playing. Now, if you are thinking more of it in a kind of Sun Tzu's Art of War kind of thing, you would say, yeah, it would be very smart to have an army next to my base where I'm going for a one base all in, and then the moment I move out, they move into my base. That would be very damaging, but, oh, well, you know, they're not gonna do it. No, actually, Heart is gonna do it.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's...
And I heart him for that.
It is, it's a very interesting, you know, sort of dynamic. And, you know, you were talking a little bit about opening your mind and thinking a little bit more about what could come, or, you know, dealing with this type of play style. And it's actually funny because I feel like Zergs were forced to do that versus Protoss with the Warp-In utility, right? I mean, there came a point in time where you started to see Zergs develop this ability to use 4 Zerglings to completely canvas the map to try to find that one pylon that might actually turn the game in favor of, you know, of the Protoss. So it's almost the same thing to me, where he's kind of using that, where it's like, well, I can't warp in my Marines, but I put them right here. Yeah, and I just sort of like have this ready to attack army, something that a Zergling, or, you know, and that last game case, you know, some probe or whatever could have spotted that. So
yeah,
I think it's a great point.
Very nice comparison that you made, because one probe on the map could just ruin your day. One probe can symbolize one pylon, and one pylon could be anything. It could be 4 units, it could be 20, depending on how long you don't see it. So a constant map awareness is of crucial importance when you're playing against Heart.
Now we've got the Cloak Banshee on the way. Of course, the Reactor Hellion was the opening here, and we already have the first Hellions at the top of the ramp. Now DRG has, or at the front of DRG's base, and DRG has plenty of Queens again. And you know, you talked about all the various utility, from being able to transfuse, to inject, to defend, to spread creep. And so I too do like this multi-Queen opening, especially when you're going to go very light on the gas. But you've still got to be careful, because things like this could happen, and a great little wall up there by the Queens. However, the drones, they are going to get back in. He kind of hesitates a little bit there, Grubby, and then finally pulls his drones away. The Hellions did take advantage of that just a little bit, but he did stop them from making his way into the main.
Getting a lot of kills here already at 11 worker kills, now 12. And actually gets 2 Hellions out of there. And let's talk a little bit about what he saw. He saw 2 extra gases at the main. at the natural, excuse me. He doesn't know how many there are in the main, but most likely at least one. So now he's putting Dongraegu on anywhere from 3 to 4 gases. He also saw the Roach Warrant. So Roaches, they have basically 2 utilities early on in the game against Terran. Either they're just for defense, to be really cost efficient against Hellions. They can also lend itself to something like a Roach Baneling bust. And Cloak Banshee is coming on the field.
Oh.
No Evo chamber with DJ Weed.
Yeah, it just finished up, Grubby, and I'll tell you what, the timing of that particular cloak was just phenomenal. Now, he does take out one of the queens, but now he can choose to just go after drones. We do have an Evo, or we do have a Spore Crawler going up both in the main and at the natural, but how many kills do we have already? Up to 5. Really waiting for that one spore to pop, and then look, he's just going to go down below, take out a few drones here at the natural. There it does pop up, and he's taken very little damage here. He's going to get up to 8 kills, potentially even more with these Zerglings out at the front, but certainly paid for itself as we have a second Banshee now in play. And you know, sometimes if the Zerg dealt with that Banshee good enough, then Hart has to pull his Banshee back, and then he, you know, uses the new one. But in this case, he suffered no damage to those Banshees, or very little, and now is able to sort of double the damage he's doing. And a lot more Spore Crawlers have gone down as a result.
Yeah, and just really nicely done by Hart there. And then we take a look at his base, and he's got his orbital command ready. He's at 32 SCVs, obviously a little bit low, but the real story here is his tech choice. He's adding 2 more factories, so we're going to see a kind of mech base play. 2 tech labs are ready. The Starport relinquished its tech lab for a factory, and so did the barracks. So we're going to see 3 factories, 1 reactored Hellion factory, and 2 factories possibly to make tanks initially, or maybe even Thors, since the armory is finished. We could be seeing Thor soon.
I think you're right. I think that this might be one of those, I've done a lot of damage to you. You're going to try to sort of get yourself back in balance, and you know, then suddenly I'm just going to throw a ton of Thors at you. We do have 1 Thor on the way already. Hellions continuing. Are we going to see Blue Flame as well? Don't have the gas for it quite yet. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Now with 3 Banshees out on the field too.
It's so smart what Hart is doing. When you can really force your opponent to a very powerful response to your units, like you force them to counter the Cloak Banshees basically, so you know there's going to be a Spire on the field. Otherwise those Banshees are just going to control everything. And what is so good against like small amounts of Mutalisks? A timing attack with Thors.
Yeah.
He's just, I mean, he's got everything planned out so nicely. 2 Thors now on the field. He's got the first vehicle weapons coming in, and only now a 3rd coming down from Dongraegu. Roughly got planted down somewhere at the 10-minute, 40-second mark. So having a lot of drones, but not able to spread them out across 3 bases, yet. And I like how Hart is like, yeah, I'm just gonna make 1 Viking. I'll just kill a lot of Overlords. Because those Overlords were being used to spot for the Banshees.
Yeah.
So he will get 2 Overlords guaranteed, and that means less vision. There's more air on the map, like the Overlord in the middle, the Overseers in various places, and now Overlord is dying in Hart's base.
Is this Overlord going to see? He sees 1 factory. He did maybe, if he was looking at vision, get a glimpse of that 1 Thor that was popping out right now, but the 2 other Thors did return back to base. Looks like they are now making their way out, and the Mutas are on their way over. So are we going to have a Thor left in the base? I don't see any missile turrets down at all. And first Muta is going to hit Hart's base, immediately starting to go after those SCVs. And this is actually not great for Hart. Oh, there we go. Perfect timing on that Thor coming out. Now, there's enough to Magic Box, but of course he can repair that Thor. And here comes a big force at the front of DRG's main.
Yeah, Infernal Pre-Igniter is about to finish in 30 seconds. It's not quite done yet, but soon it will be as the fight starts in earnest. 3 Thors and a bunch of SCVs marching across the map here. And what does Dongraegu really have? He has a bunch of Zerglings, 33 Zerglings with 8 more coming, 40 Zerglings, and he's got 11 Mutalisks.
Yeah, this hurts a little bit. I mean, as a Zerg player, I just don't see how he's going to deal with that. SCV's coming in for the repair. He's even being diligent, trying to micro back those Hellions as well. He's going to quickly take out those 2 Spine Crawlers. And, I mean, with the Zerglings, the Hellions should take care of those pretty easily. Some Banelings come in, do a little bit of damage, and actually, DRG handling this quite well. And I'm surprised. I don't know that Hart was expecting those Banelings to come in, but,
Yeah.
I mean, that was cleaned up real nice by DRG. I thought he was in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think we both weren't really expecting the outcome of that battle. Those 3 Banelings, they killed like 8 Hellions. And ideally, you would want to have like 3 Thors positioned, not together in the front, and then the Hellions shooting from behind there to take down all the Banelings. And then have the Thors being repaired by SCVs. And we see Marine King often with such good positioning and micro in these type of situations. And Hart, he's just a little bit of a tier below that in terms of unit control. I feel like the timing and the idea was good, but he couldn't quite get the mileage out of that army that he would have wanted to.
Additionally, Hart is really oversaturated here at his natural. Don't see a new orbital down quite yet. And this is going to give DRG finally an opportunity to breathe a little bit here. We do have Mutas going to try to capture some map control. There's a lot of Zerglings on the way. He is getting +2 air weapons being upgraded right now, taking a 4th as well. So he went from basically being in a lot of trouble and wondering how he's going to defend this to now, with a little bit of, with a little bit of room to play with here. Now the Muta's trying to stop these Hellions and the single Viking, but the Thors coming up from behind. There are a lot more Thors now. So can he deal with the same thing? However, Ling counterattack.
And it's going to be really nice. There was not a full wall up yet. He's going to lose this Thor here, his 7th Thor, and he's going to lose almost all of his SCVs. And is he going to be able to get the supply depot wall up in time? No, he's not, because the SCVs were blocking it, and now his main is in a world of trouble. 1 Thor will pop out and 2 Hellions, but kind of in the wrong order, so the Zerglings are taking down those Hellions first. Now, let's take a look at the fight in the main base of Dongraegu. Supply differential is just huge. Hart only with 90 supply, but he does have a bunch of Thors here. They're taking down Overlords, and in comes Dongraegu with his Roaches, Zerglings, and Banelings. And his Banelings will connect with everything, and the Roaches will clear up the damaged Thors with just a few Thors remaining. It's going to look very, very bleak for Hart indeed.
GG.
GG gets called.
I mean, I can't wait to hear what Sheth at QXC have to say. I mean, I really felt like through the duration of that, DRG sort of like back up against the wall, not a whole lot of room to maneuver in, but he seemed to just make all the right decisions, all the perfect clicks to make that happen for him. Sheth, let's talk with you first, and then QXC. Maybe you could tell us why that failed from Hart.
Yeah, to start off with, the Banshees were really nice. Whenever we saw that second gas come down, we really thought, okay, he's going to go Banshee. We weren't sure if there was Cloak, but he meant Cloak. And then the way DRG held it off, even with only using, I think, 2 spores, was just a really nice hold. And then there was a timing where he went to take his expansion, his 3rd base, and the Banshee still could have killed it, but DRG just snuck that in. And then I think at that point, it was on the Terran to attack perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Banshees really were cost efficient at all in that situation. Okay. He got about 11 kills. The Banshees are, I mean, 2 Banshees plus Cloak is already basically 10 drones. And when Zerg sees you do that Banshee and he doesn't get caught off guard, he's just going to go and drone as hard as he wants because he knows there's no big follow-up right away, especially when there's that expansion follow-up. And so we saw Hart with about 30 SCVs to Dongraegu's 50 or so drones, and I think that was really the issue with the attack.
Yeah, there were a couple of times where the Banshee attacked the Spore Crawler for two or so salvos, and then he was flying towards the natural and shooting, and then is it that you felt like if he got the maximum amount of drone kills, it might have been worth it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely if he had microed that Banshee a little bit better and maybe split them up, poked in a little bit more, denied that 3rd a little bit longer, he just didn't get his money worth out of those Banshees, and it made the follow-up transition much weaker.
Real quickly, because we're about to hop into game number 3, but QXC, if you were to say, like, this is the reason why Hart didn't win off of the Thor push that came after, of course, the Banshees with the Blue Flame, what would you attribute that to?
I actually think it's basically two things. He didn't have any Marines, and he had bad splits on his Hellions. 3 Thors alone have a really hard time killing 11 or 12 Mutalisks with magic boxing. A lot of your SCVs will die, and then the Hellions just soaked way too much damage from those Banelings. I would have really liked to see maybe 15 or 20 Marines supporting that push. You get a reactor on your barracks pretty early on. You can make something like that happen, or even adding a couple of siege tanks.
All right, so it looks like Game 3 is ready. We're going to be going on to Cloud Kingdom, ESV Cloud Kingdom here for the third and final game, and tied 1 game apiece. Either way, we're coming out of this at 2-1, which is kind of surprising. I mean, it's not surprising, actually, but it's surprising that nearly every single match that we've been seeing today has been like 2-1, 2-1s, 2-1s.